Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye urges North Korea to scrap plans to launch a rocket next month. She also uses her speech at the UN General Assembly to press Japan over history. After reaching its peak last night, the customary Chuseok traffic on Korea's expressways steadily returns to normal on the last day of the four-day holiday. Plus, NASA finds evidence there's water flowing on Mars. The discovery has major implications for the chances of finding life on the red planet. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, September 29th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to our early morning edition of Arirang News. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye gave her highly anticipated keynote speech at the UN General Assembly on Monday local time. As expected, President Park used it as an opportunity to warn North Korea about the consequences of further provocations. Hwang Sung-hee reports from New York.
President Park Geun-hye says North Korea's nuclear ambition is one of the most urgent issues to be addressed by the international community. Speaking at the UN General Assembly on Monday, President Park pledged to support Pyongyang if it abandoned its nuclear program.
북한이 과감하게 핵을 포기하고 개방과 협력의 길로 나온다면 대한민국은 국제사회와 힘을 모아 북한이 경제를 개발하고 주민들의 삶의 질을 향상시킬 수 있도록 적극 지원할 것입니다.
The keynote speech comes amid Pyongyang's nuclear threats and speculation of a possible long-range rocket launch next month, which would be in violation of UN resolutions. President Park warned that a fresh provocation will only damage the hard-won atmosphere for inter-Korean dialogue and undermine efforts to restart the long-stalled six-party nuclear talks. The Koreas are set to hold reunions for war-separated families in October, following a landmark inter-Korean agreement last month.
특히 이산가족 상봉을 비롯한 인도주의 문제가 정치, 군사적 이유로 더 이상 외면되어서는 안 될 것입니다.
President Park stressed that a peaceful reunification will ultimately lead to a nuclear-free and prosperous Korean peninsula where humanitarian rights are guaranteed. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News, New York.
Now, staying with President Park's speech to the UN, the South Korean leader also urged Japan to squarely face history, saying there's no way to unlock the future without doing so. Son Jung-in reports.
과거를 인지하지 못하고 미래를 열어갈 수 있는 길은 없습니다.
That was the message President Park Geun-hye had for Japan in her keynote speech at the UN General Assembly on Monday. More than 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese military before and during World War II. Time is running out for the elderly victims to receive proper compensation and an apology from the Japanese government, with just 47 registered comfort women left in South Korea.
이분들이 살아 계실 때 마음의 상처를 치유할 수 있는 해결책이 조속히 마련되어야 합니다.
President Park also touched upon Japan's controversial set of security bills, stressing the importance of transparency.
이번에 통과된 일본의 방위 안보 법률은 영내 국가 간 설린 우호 관계와 이 지역의 평화와 안정에 도움이 되는 방향으로 투명성 있게 이행되어 나가야 할 것입니다.
The bills allow Japan to fight alongside its allies even when the country is not under attack. This has sparked concerns in Korea about Tokyo's possible misuse of its newly found power, considering the country's past militarism. The remark comes as the leaders of the two countries are inching closer to holding their first summit this fall on the sidelines of planned trilateral talks with China. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
US President Barack Obama and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin have clashed over how to resolve the Syrian crisis. In his speech at the annual meeting of the UN General Assembly on Monday, Obama urged a political transition to replace Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, whose forces have been fighting Islamic State militants and other extremist groups for more than 4 years now. Putin, however, said in his speech that changing the regime would be a mistake, arguing that the Syrian government military is the only viable option for defeating IS. Their speeches came hours before the two leaders were to sit down face to face for the first time in nearly 1 year to discuss the situation amid escalating Russian military engagement in Syria. China's President Xi Jinping has pledged at the United Nations to promote gender equality and women's development worldwide. And some are calling the move ironic, considering China has been highly criticised for detaining human rights activists, including many women. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Chinese President Xi Jinping co-chaired this year's UN meeting on women's development. It commemorates the 20th anniversary of a UN conference in Beijing, where world leaders adopted a blueprint to achieve gender equality, which remains a UN goal for 2030.
China will donate $10 million to UN Women for the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and its platform for action and the realization of the related goals in the post-2015 development agenda.
President Xi pledged to help other developing countries establish 100 health projects for women and children over the next 5 years. He also promised to send teams of medical experts to provide services. But the move raised eyebrows of some Western diplomats, including former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, as China has been internationally blamed for detaining human rights activists, including many women. The Democratic presidential hopeful took to Twitter, saying it's shameless for Xi to host a meeting on women's rights at the UN while persecuting feminists. Clinton is referring to the recent arrest of 5 women in China for planning a demonstration against sexual harassment on International Women's Day in March. During the UN meeting Sunday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel urged world leaders to do more for women's rights. President Park Geun-hye took up the issue in her keynote speech to the UN, vowing to provide $200 million in the next 5 years to help young girls in developing countries. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Scientists at NASA have found evidence of flowing water on Mars, a discovery which has major implications for the chance of finding life on the red planet. The announcement came on Monday after analysis of satellite images showed small streaks of liquid water flowing down slopes on Mars. The images identify narrow streaks, mostly less than 5 meters wide. They appear on slopes during warm seasons, lengthen and then fade when conditions get colder. Experts at NASA aren't entirely sure where this water comes from, but they think it may rise up from underground ice. Now, flowing water is the crucial component for sustainable life and potential human colonization one day. 2.1 million Audi-branded diesel cars have now been swept up in the VW emissions scandal. Audi says 1.6-litre and 2-litre turbo diesel models in the A1, A3, A4, A6, TT, Q3 and Q5 ranges contain software designed to cheat emissions tests. On top of this, another VW Group automaker, Skoda, says 1.2 million of its cars are affected. Czech-based Skoda has yet to give a model breakdown, though. In related news, German prosecutors have begun a probe against Volkswagen's former CEO. German authorities say Martin Winterkorn will be investigated over allegations of fraud in the sale of cars with manipulated emissions data. Now to the latest traffic conditions in Korea on this last day of the 4-day Chuseok Thanksgiving holiday. And traffic is running smoothly on most highways nationwide at this early hour in the morning, but congestion is expected to worsen later in the day as remaining travellers return home from their extended weekend. The Korea Expressway Corporation estimates around 460,000 vehicles will enter the Seoul metropolitan area on this Tuesday. Traffic on northbound highways is expected to peak between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. before easing from around 8 p.m. Traffic authorities say roads will be less congested compared to normal weekends, with some 3.8 million vehicles expected to hit the roads throughout the day. Now, Chuseok is obviously a wonderful time of the year, but there can be downsides. Weight gain from all the rich foods, fatigue from endless driving and long hours in the kitchen, not to mention the emotional stress. For suggestions on how to overcome the so-called post-Chuseok syndrome, here's our Connie Kim.
Songpyeon, mini-sized rice cakes filled with sesame seeds, and chon, Korean pancakes made from anything seafood, vegetables, and kimchi are widely eaten during Chuseok. They're delicious but high in calories. Korea's welfare ministry says an average adult consumes about 5,000 to 6,000 calories every day during the holiday period, more than double the recommended daily limit. Doctors say this can seriously affect people suffering certain diseases.
In worst-case scenarios, patients suffering diabetes or kidney disease come to emergency rooms suffering from excessive amounts of sugar and sodium intakes.
And even if someone doesn't suffer such ailments, doctors recommend people to take a stroll after their meals. For women, the repetitive motions involved in making large quantities of traditional ritual food may produce physical pain brought on by carpal tunnel syndrome. Men are also not immune, especially after driving endless hours to and from their hometowns. Some of the quick motions to relieve pain are slowly raise both hands in the air and pull them both down behind head. Next, raise arms to chest level, then bend the wrist 90 degrees up and down. Finally, raise arms to chest level, make a fist, rotate them clockwise and counterclockwise. Also, it's not just the physical stress that drains people. Questions about employment, marriage, as well as comparisons to other family members can stress people out. While some psychologists say it's a way of elders showing care, they suggest stepping into their shoes might help everyone have a happier Chuseok holiday. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, tens of thousands of Chinese tourists have been visiting Korea's southern resort island of Jeju over the Chuseok holidays. The Jeju Special Self-Governing Provincial Tourism Association estimates that around 39,000 foreign tourists visited Jeju from Friday through Monday, and most of them were from China. And this is largely due to China's recent celebration of two major holidays, including the Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival and the National Day holiday. The association says Chinese tourists account for around 80 to 90% of foreign visitors to Jeju these days, many of them visiting the island to enjoy duty-free shopping and cruises. Now, big and small firms in Korea are increasingly opening up to the option of granting flexible hours at work, with the policy proving to have various benefits for both employers and workers. Lee Ju-young has this report.
Researcher Lee Jung-in says balancing work and family time has become much easier ever since her workplace, the state-run Korea Institute of Energy Research, granted flexible work hours to employees.
It's a lot of help since I'm able to go to work after taking more time in the morning to send my children off to kindergarten.
Currently, more than half of the total staff members at this institute come to work between 7 to 10 in the morning and leave anywhere between 4 to 10 at night. Many have welcomed the change, implemented since April this year, saying the policy has come in handy during personal emergencies and planning for vacations.
It's a lot of help when it comes to raising my kids, and since I can set my own schedule, I think I can focus better at work.
It's not just at public entities. Korea's conglomerates like Samsung, LG, and Hyundai have also allowed employees to take on more flexibility in their work hours, with an aim to promote more efficiency in the office and foster creativity. Experts say this kind of flexibility can increase leisure time, which can eventually boost domestic consumption. And while the concept of flexible working hours is not as prevalent in Korea compared to other developed nations, an increasing number of people are hoping for more freedom at the workplace. Lee Ju-young, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a great day, and thank you as always for tuning in. Goodbye.